Order. Dr Al Pinkerton to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr Vickers. I beg to move that this House has considered the impact of local government reorganisation in the South East. And it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Vickers, today. And I'm grateful to all of the honourable and right honourable members from all parties and from across the House who will be contributing to this debate. Local government is the tier of government most closely woven into people's everyday lives. It's where national decisions become local realities, the roads we drive on, the services that support vulnerable families, the planning decisions that shape our towns, and the community spaces that bring people together. And it's for that reason that I support the principle of devolution. Decisions should, wherever possible, be taken by those closest to the communities they directly affect. But as is so often the case in public policy, the principle isn't the difficulty, it's the implementation. And in Surrey, the implementation is already raising serious concerns about scale, about financial sustainability, and about a process that has moved forward with a troubling democratic deficit. Now, this debate, of course, concerns the South East of England more generally, but I know colleagues from across the region will speak about how reorganisation is affecting their own counties and their own communities. But my perspective naturally comes from Surrey, where those concerns are already becoming clear. Size, remoteness and financial fragility are among them. And we must add to that mix a glaring democratic deficit. I would be delighted to take an intervention.
First of all, can I commend the honourable gentleman for the debate? And I spoke to him beforehand, so he knows where I'm coming from. I want to support him, first of all. That's the reason why I'm here, number one. Number two is to give an example, Mr Chairman, of what has happened to us and will be similar to what the honourable gentleman is referring to. When two councils within my constituency merged to create what was then ours and then into North Down together, one issue that was put forward as a must-do will be the financial savings, the administrative savings, and two councils being able to do the job of one. That didn't work out. So does the honourable member agree that whilst efforts should be welcome to streamline governance, more action must be taken to provide adequate financial support to cover one-off reorganisation costs without compromising the service delivery, such as waste services, just as one example?
I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman, as ever, for his thoughtful, sagacious intervention. He will discover, if he is able to remain for the rest of my speech, that I do cover exactly those two key fundamental topics, both the funding of that transitional moment, but also the certainty that joining two authorities together, in fact, produces long-term savings, and the modelling that those assumptions rely upon. So I will be raising exactly those issues. In late 2024, Surrey was placed on a fast-track path towards local government reorganisation. That process was triggered when the leadership of Surrey County Council requested that the government cancel local elections scheduled for May 2025. That request was granted. The result is that councillors elected in 2021 will now remain in office until April 2027, 2 years beyond their original mandate, while overseeing one of the most significant and consequential restructurings of local government in our county's history. The idea of cancelling elections has, of course, more recently fallen out of favour with both the government and, as I understand it, the Conservative Party. Sadly for those of us in Surrey, that realisation came only after the Surrey Conservatives pulled the trigger on the policy the government had placed before them. Now, whatever one's view of reorganisation itself, it's difficult to argue that such a profound change should proceed without giving residents the opportunity to pass judgment on those leading it. Local government reform should be carried out with democratic consent, not in its absence. Alongside these democratic concerns sit serious financial questions. Over the past decade, several councils across Surrey pursued large-scale commercial property investments in an attempt to generate income as central government funding declined. In some cases, those strategies have left councils carrying extremely substantial debt. The 6 councils that could form the proposed West Surrey Council, Woking, Spelthorne, Guildford, Runnymede, Surrey Heath and Waverley, collectively carry around £4.5 billion worth of debt. £4.5 billion. In my own constituency, the then Conservative-led Surrey Heath Borough Council speculated wildly on commercial property between 2016 and 2019, spending £113 million on a shopping centre with a knackered roof and a former department store riddled with asbestos. At the time, these purchases were described by the council's then chief executive as investments that would help secure the council's long-term financial viability as government funding declined. In practice, it amounted to a Conservative-run borough council borrowing heavily on the financial markets and through the Public Works Loan Board in the hope of defying the gravity of cuts coming from a Conservative central government. Now, today, those assets are estimated to be worth around £30 million. 30 million, not the original 113 million. They're operationally loss-making and together risk bankrupting my borough before we even reach unitarisation next year. Surrey Heath can't afford to keep them and it can't afford to sell them because selling them would crystallise the losses that they have incurred. In neighbouring, I would be delighted.
I thank my honourable member for giving way, and he's very eloquently explaining the real serious financial situation that many potential unitary councils are going to be in, and they're going to be saddled with such financial burdens. It's going to be really difficult for them to deliver the services that local residents will need. Indeed, in East Surrey, they've identified over a 3-year financial forecast a potential £35 million deficit, and obviously Whitehall funding settlement currently doesn't really reflect the real cost pressures that these councils will experience. So does my honourable friend agree with me that Labour really does need to fix the broken funding system and not leave residents paying the price?
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend's intervention. Labour may not have broken the local government system in Surrey, but there is now an obligation to ensure that those people who live in Surrey aren't faced with bankruptcy of their new unitary authorities on day one of their existence, especially given the vital services that they will be delivering. In neighbouring Woking, another Conservative-run council in those fateful years, the gravitational denialism was even wilder. During that same period, Woking Borough Council accumulated debts that now stand at approximately £2.1 billion. It's said that that debt is so large that it directly impacts the government's own borrowing capacity in international markets. Now, versions of that story are repeated across much of West Surrey, a pattern of behaviour that, frankly, has never been properly investigated. I will finish the sentence and then I will absolutely allow the gentleman to intervene. It's a pattern of behaviour that's never been properly investigated, and they've been compounded by systemic failures in the auditing of local government accounts. And I will give way to that.
Is the honourable gentleman astounded, as am I, that the majority of that debt is with the Public Works Loan Board, which sits underneath the Treasury? When asked the question, where was the Treasury in all of this when this debt was being allowed to accumulate?
I couldn't agree with the honourable gentleman more, and I will come on and talk about a systemic failure as I see it in the power that Section 151 officers of borough councils have in being able to effectively sign off the ability of a council to repay debts when accumulated, a power that I think is far in excess necessarily of the skills that they have. And after all, there's not a separate mechanism to determine, for example, from the Treasury, from the PWLB, the ability of a council to actually fulfil its obligations. It's therefore entirely reasonable that residents ask a simple question. Why should communities that played no role in accumulating this debt now be expected to inherit its consequences through a newly created local authority? If reorganisation is intended to create a stable future for local government, it would be deeply concerning for any new authority to begin life already burdened with billions of pounds in inherited liabilities. So I ask the Minister, what assurances can the government provide that any future West Surrey authority will begin life next year on a financially sustainable footing? It cannot be right that my residents face the realistic prospect of their new unitary authority being bankrupt or effectively bankrupt on day one of its existence, given the critical services that councils will be expected to provide. The scale of borrowing in Surrey also raises wider questions about financial oversight in local government, and this is where I come to the answer to the honourable gentleman, the member for Crawley. Local authorities rely on statutory finance officers, Section 151 officers, to ensure financial prudence. Yet the scale of borrowing undertaken by some councils suggests that existing safeguards have not always been sufficient to prevent high-risk commercial strategies. This debate is often framed in terms of protecting Section 151 officers from excessive political pressure, and that may very well be necessary. But it's also true that Section 151 officers hold significant authority within council structures and must themselves be subject to proper scrutiny and accountability, something that I think is very often lacking because councillors very often perceive that they're not allowed to overly scrutinise 151 officers because of members' codes of conduct. Will the government therefore consider whether additional safeguards or oversight mechanisms are needed to prevent similar situations arising again in the future, particularly as councils become larger, their finances more complex and the risks even greater? There are also important questions about the size and structure of the authorities now being proposed. Under current proposals, the new West Surrey Council would serve approximately 657,000 residents. By comparison, the average non-metropolitan unitary authority in England serves around 265,000 residents, with most fewer than 300,000. Authorities of the scale that we're talking about today risk weakening democratic accountability, diluting local knowledge and making decision-making feel more distant from the communities it's meant to serve. Now, ministers have suggested that larger authorities will deliver financial efficiencies. And in support of that argument, the government has relied on modelling produced by the County Council's network, which happens to be chaired by the very same leader of Surrey County Council who locked Surrey into this fast-track pathway in the first place. Now, despite several parliamentary questions seeking clarification, it remains unclear what independent modelling the government itself has undertaken to substantiate those claimed savings. So I ask the Minister again, has the government undertaken its own economic modelling of the projected financial benefits of local government reorganisation in Surrey? And if so, will that modelling now be published publicly? And finally, we should recognise that all of this is unfolding while councils continue to deliver vital services under considerable strain. In my constituency, the concerns most frequently raised with me relate to special educational needs and disabilities provision. Hundreds of families contact me with problems with EHCPs, incorrect names, incorrect details, long delays and support packages that simply do not meet the needs of the children concerned. For the past 3 years, Surrey has recorded the highest number of send tribunal appeals nationally. At the same time, residents regularly contact me about deteriorating road surfaces, potholes causing vehicle damage and wider infrastructural pressures. Now, these are not abstract policy debates. There are real challenges affecting families who rely on local government services every single day.
On that point,
I would be delighted to give way to my honourable friend.
Thank my honourable friend for giving way and for setting out in with such exemplary clarity the challenges of going ahead with local government reorganisation, particularly on the timescales that have been set. He is a member for a Surrey constituency, and for me, as having a constituency in West Sussex, we are currently awaiting the outcome of government consultation on whether the footprint of the new unitaries will be a single unitary covering all of West Sussex, second only in size to Birmingham City Council, or our preferred option of 2 West Sussex future unitary councils. Doesn't he agree that constituents need to have local decision-making and that level of accountability? So when potholes or send are failing, actually those constituents have got that close relationship with their councils and they can get answers that they deserve.
Well, I feel every sympathy with my honourable friend's campaign for 2 unitary authorities. I was very heavily supportive of 3 unitary authorities for Surrey, and sadly we were denied that because I think that would have delivered the much more local accountability to which the honourable lady refers. I wish her good luck in her campaign for 2 unitary authorities and for the local accountability that she recognises is so important for her constituents. There is also a wider concern that I hear frequently from the voluntary and charitable sector. Many charities organise themselves around existing local authority boundaries. They rely on those relationships for funding, for partnerships and for the delivery of services. Local government reorganisation risks sweeping away that social infrastructure. Boundaries change, funding streams shift, relationships built up over years can disappear overnight. Yet this is happening at precisely the moment when charities may be more important than ever, helping communities pick up the pieces during a period of institutional upheaval and ensuring that vulnerable people don't fall through the gaps that inevitably appear during major restructuring. Against that backdrop, local government reorganisation is creating a substantial additional workload for councils and their staff, many of whom are already working under tight financial constraints and significant workforce pressures. Local government reform should strengthen local institutions, not weaken them. It should produce councils that are financially stable, democratically accountable and close enough to the communities they serve to understand their needs. Those are the standards that fundamentally matter, and they are the standards against which people across Surrey and across the South East will judge the outcome of this process. Thank you.